Hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now. Not only do you hear the trolley bell, but you also hear the school bell as we are fully immersed in the back-to-school season here at PR from the Heart. Welcome back to another all-new episode of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. To be precise, we have reached episode number 30. It's a pretty cool milestone, isn't it? That is the 30th trolley stop, episode number 30 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast here at PR from the Heart. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart, joined as always. You remember him and you love him as the beloved Mr. McFeely on the popular long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He helped to bring smiles to faces and hearts of children, parents, and families for many back-to-school seasons during his time at Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Joining us as always, my co-host on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, David Newell. David, it's hard to believe. Where is the summer gone? The kids are now back in school, and depending upon when people are watching episode number 30 of the Bookcast, some are just about to be heading back to school as well. But this is always a very vibrant and amazing time of the year for our little ones.
It's always an exciting time. A little apprehension goes along with that too. They're not quite sure what the next grade will bring, but they get there and they get adjusted for the most part. And my heart goes out to them because I remember those days, those first days of school. You didn't know what was going to happen, what homework you would have, what new friends you'd meet, would your old friends be there? At any rate, we both got through it, I guess, right?
We did. We lived to tell the tale, so to speak. But, you know, one of the things that we're really going to be enjoying about this episode of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is, especially, we love to be able to provide resources of care for parents, for caregivers, for grandparents, and for educators. And especially during the back to school season, David, let's be honest, you know, parents and caregivers and grandparents and educators, they've got a lot on their plate and they need some additional help and they need some additional support. So we have two brand new children's books that will help to be able to really make this the most memorable back to school season for your little ones, either ever or in recent memory in the process. Now, of course, if you are new to the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, what David and I, we do is we gather together like this each and every month, and we take the time as a little tip of the cap to his character on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Mr. McFeely. We deliver new heartfelt reviews from some of the newest children's books, from some of the top award-winning and best-selling children's authors in the world of children's literature, and some of those shining stars that are on the rise as well too. So we always love to be able to complement the works of self-published authors along with some of the larger names, even more so in the world of children's literature, because you know what, all of these books, David, we've had the opportunities to review countless books now over the past 2.5 years in the Bookcast, and all of these are essential resources for children. So if you are new to our neighborhood here at PR from the Heart and the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for us here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. Share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying. That is episode number 30 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Remember, if you are new to the program, you can always look back to the previous 29 Neighborly Reviews Bookcast episodes and see how David and I have grown and what we've learned along the way. We've got some wonderful, empowering reads that are literally at your fingertips. You can join the nearly 6,000 strong in terms of YouTube subscribers at PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. And of course, each and every month, we are proud to be able to pledge our support for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. Now, if you're not familiar with Reading is Fundamental, they are the largest children's literacy non-for-profit organization in the United States. They provide children's books, developmental resources, and literacy tools for children that come from low-income families. Now, David, of course, as many people who are tuning in may know, or some if they don't know, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was filmed in Pittsburgh. So as our way of giving back to the children of Pittsburgh, especially those who are moving through some challenging, difficult times this back to school season, we are proud to pledge our support for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh, which is the Pittsburgh affiliate, the Pittsburgh chapter of Reading is Fundamental. So we encourage you, as we like to say, no donation is too large, no donation is too small. When you are pledging your support for Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh, you can head on over to rifpittsburgh.org/donate. And again, just the smallest of contributions can even make a world of difference, especially for the back to school season and leading into the holidays, because this is really one of the most important times when children can be introduced to reading, David, and where children can spend more time perfecting their craft when it comes to reading, literacy, comprehension, spelling, grammar, you name it, all of the above.
That's right. And our first book is Shelly and Friends. That's the one we're going to do first. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the trolley, of course, as you know, if you have been with us here in our neighborhood for some time, here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, the trolley starts off here in San Diego with little Forrest and I, who, by the way, little Forrest is joining us on the Bookcast, but he actually had a certain kind of procedure where, as we like to say, we followed the advice of the beloved longtime host of The Price is Right, Bob Barker. He would say, have your pet spayed or neutered. And so little Forrest just actually had his procedure on his end of things. So if you hear, a little cone clunking in the background, that's just little Forrest navigating some space here in our office. But of course, he is with us not only in spirit, but he's with us physically as well too. So the trolley travels from San Diego with little Forrest and I. We head on over to Pittsburgh, and then we head to the beautiful city of Fort Myers, Florida. Some great people out in Fort Myers, Florida, some wonderful educators especially. And we are going to be sharing and reviewing the debut children's book from one of the newest members of the PR from the Hart family, Mary Asaro. And the title of the book is entitled Shelly and Friends. One of the things that I want to mention, David, before we officially begin with Shelly and Friends, I really love how this is not the traditional children's book. Normally, when you purchase a book, whether it be through Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you go to your favorite children's or independent bookstore or your local library, you see a book that's maybe, a little bit larger in size, a square or a rectangle, but this is like a little pocketbook of love that you can give to your little one, and it covers really important themes that tie into things along the lines of love, children's mental health, and we're going to be expanding more about that. But it all begins where we're introduced to a turtle named Shelly, David. So if you can take us inside the pages of Mary Asaro's Shelly and Friends.
Okay, there's my Shelly and Friends bookmark. I'll take it out. There you have yours.
We got our matching bookmarks, David. I love that.
Okay, well, Shelly and Friends, it, as you said, takes place in the waters of Florida. And what I like about Shelly and Friends is it's a small book, but it's filled with many family activities. For instance, on the first 2 pages, the reader is introduced to Shelly, the turtle, and underneath the words in the book is a space where the reader can write or print their name. Shelly wants to know your name before we start reading the book, so print or write. That's the first step. And there's also a space where the reader can place a picture of themselves. That's on the page. So already it's a personalized book. It's your book. We find out that Shelly has a friend, Gracie the manatee, and they have lunch together and eat their favorite food, which you can probably guess is seaweed. That's their favorite food. And what's your favorite food? The reader can answer this question by filling in the blank and place a picture of their favorite food under that passage. So that's the next step. Well, there's another page. We find out that Shelly is going to have baby turtles soon, and asks the readers, well, do you have any brothers or sisters? And there's a space for the reader to place a picture of their family. So already we're going right along, we're progressing. Well, now the drama begins. Gigi, the cardinal, from up in her tree could see a snake slithering towards Shelly's baby turtle eggs. And Gigi warned Shelly that Sinus, the snake, was hungry. It could be Sinus or Sinus. You can have fun with that word, Sinus or Sinus, but whatever you want to say, but that's the snake's name. But he was hungry. Stay away from my baby. Shelly was scared. And at this point, the reader is encouraged to talk about what might scare them. So if you're reading this book to your children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, you can have that discussion right in the midst of when the drama is taking place. And it would be helpful to talk about that. Oh, but all the way, now let's see. Oh, I know. During all of this time, there is a friend of Shelley's floating around. His name is Ozzy the Osprey. Now, you might want to know what an osprey is. I had to look it up, but it's a form of a hawk. And Ozzy was flying by, and Ozzy saw the snake looking at the eggs. And so Ozzy swooped down and carried the snake away from the turtle eggs. And Shelley was so happy that her friend Ozzy helped her. Here we go into friendship and helping others. That's always reinforced in the book. Oh, and now there's a space for the reader to write the names of two friends that can help when needed. So right after that episode where the turtle eggs are saved and Ozzy helped her, there's a spot where you can talk about maybe some friends that can help you, which I think is wonderful. Well, Shelley told Gracie the manatee that it's great to have good friends to help me. Gracie agreed, but seemed to be curious about a boat that's floating in the water above them. No sooner than they saw the boat than Shelley was caught in the boat's fishing net. Well, now here is a point where the reader is encouraged to talk about a time when a friend may have helped you, and a space to put a picture of your friend. I like this because you're making your own book as you go along. And Shelley's friends Gigi and Grace, they wanted to help, but they also said, well, now maybe Ozzy can help. Ozzy can fly. So here we go. Ozzy is flying and I will help. But first, Ozzy said, I want to teach this snake a lesson in kindness. And Ozzy had taken the snake up to a tree branch, didn't hurt it, just making the snake learn to stay away from the turtle eggs, a lesson in kindness. Well, Gracie, the manatee swam over to help Shelley, and Ozzy joined in the rescue. Now, at this point, the reader is asked to talk about a time when you or your family helped someone in need. Maybe you help them shovel their driveways from snow or whatever. We don't all get snow, but you know what I'm saying. It'd be a helpful neighbor. Well, Ozzy swooped down to free Shelley from the net, and the first thing she asked Ozzy if her turtle eggs were safe. Shelley said that when she was caught in the net, she was afraid she'd never see her babies again. So she was so grateful for Ozzy's help, and she thanked him for all he did to help her. And Ozzy replied, here's what he said: "It is always good to help a friend in need." And that is reinforced through the whole book. And Gigi, the cardinal, said, "We love you and we're always here to help you." And here is a point in the story where the reader and family, mom, dad, grandparents, whoever's reading the book, can tell each other what love means to them. And there's actually a few sentences that suggest that as they're reading along. Maybe they can, and this might take a long time, but it would be interesting to hear the feedback. And, maybe the children would say a sentence or two. You never know, but it's encouraging them. So on the last page, we all see Shelley's friend gathered around her, and they're saying, "Always remember that you are loved and make a difference in this world." And that's important. Always remember that you are loved and make a difference in this world. And that's what I think runs through the whole book. Love and friendship and helping others. And at the end of the book, I don't know if you saw these pages, but there's some activity pages.
Right.
One is a page featuring Shelly's friends, and the reader can color each friend. Another page, connect the dots. Oh, I always loved connect the dots when I was growing up. That was my favorite. So you can connect the dots of Shelly's friends. And there's another one, unscrambling the names of Shelly's friends. So the book probably ranges from 3 up through early elementary. I guess younger children have to be helped with spelling and so forth. But and I noticed there's a blank page. At the very end, there's a blank page, and this page could be encouraged for the reader to create a picture of their own design. Maybe saying, now here is a blank page. You can make up your own story. And that sort of wraps up Shelly and her adventures in the Florida waters. Was that too speedy of a review?
No, this was, I think that we covered everything, and we still left so many doors open for, one of the great things about children's books, especially Shelly and Friends, is that it leaves room for interpretation. Children's imaginations can just run vividly wild. There's so many reasons why I love Shelly and Friends, and why Mary's done such an incredible job with this book. Most children's books are not a children's book and an activity book in one. Oftentimes you'll have authors and illustrators that will have a separate activity book that will be adjacent, it'll be a complementary piece to the children's book. But this is something that it increases the engagement with the child. It increases the interactivity with the child. So again, right off the bat, as you mentioned, when you're introduced to Shelly, my name is Shelly and I am a turtle. What is your name? So right off the bat, the little one has the opportunities to place a picture of themselves right there. But one of the interesting things, Dave, and this is really meaningful for parents and for educators, one of the things when you start a new school, when you start school for the first time, or when you start a new school, or if you even start a new grade, you're always wondering, who am I going to meet as my friends? And so, and so right off the bat, if there's a little one that's maybe, having some difficulties making new friends, the first thing they see is Shelly is right there, and Shelly is their friend. So right off the bat, little ones know that they're not alone in the process. And I also want to go to that beautiful passage at the end of the story that you shared. Always remember that you are loved and make a difference in this world. We've shared so many fantastic books on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast over the past 2.5 years, where many of those authors have taken a page out of Mr. Rogers' book in terms of reminding children of their inherent worth, their value, that they're loved and that they're special just the way that they are. And again, I know that, maybe sometimes, people can think it's, too much, or okay, come on now. This is something that children need to hear, not only every day, but multiple times per day, because little ones' minds and hearts, they're all still developing. And it's very easy to kind of take on the weight of the world, or the belief system of, I'm not loved, I'm not special, no one loves me. It's very easy to adopt those beliefs. So the more that we can do our part to reinforce that for children, we're going to be creating a stronger generation of little neighbors when they become big neighbors like you and I.
That's right. And I like that Mary has the questions, or after, tell about this, say about this, put a picture of your friends. Because as you're going along and you have a picture to put, or a name to write in, or a favorite food to write in, you're really creating your own book. It's not only Mary's book, but it's also the reader's book too, because there's some pictures. And you probably need to buy several books, because maybe the one brother will have his name, and then the little sister will have. So you may need several copies of Shelly and Friends to make each child have their own personal book. But I like the whole concept of having children think about what was just saying, and articulate some feelings. And that's a very helpful book, and it's a very short book. The illustrations are wonderful, and it should. But it could, you could take a half hour to read this book too if you go into a lot of discussions in between or you could do it speedily in a couple minutes too.
And I could also see, one of the great things about, this being a resource for educators, if let's say teachers, let's say there's, 25 kids in the classroom, this could easily be like a classroom activity for the day where each child gets their book. They take their markers and their construction paper, bring in some pictures. They have a pen or a pencil or a writing instrument so they can, journal with some of the prompts that are asked. For example, who are two of your friends that you can ask for help? So you got to have a trusted pen, like I do right over here, or a favorite writing device in the process. And again, this is something that it can just continue. It can continue the engagement, not even just during the back to school season, but beyond. And that's really important because, oftentimes we can place so much focus on the start of the school year, but the school year is a long road, right?
Yeah.
So it's important that, and this is why one of the things that I really enjoy about the Bookcast episodes that we do is these are available forever in perpetuum, as the expression goes. If you're watching this in, 2026, for example, right? This is something that can still be a valued resource, whether it be now or down the line. The last thing that comes, actually two last things that come to mind is that, oftentimes little ones, it may take them some time to be able to travel to a new destination. And Florida's a very big hotspot because, you've got Walt Disney World and you've got Universal that are out there. There's beautiful areas in Florida, Fort Myers being one of them, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville. There's many very sunny cities out in Florida. But if a little one, along with their family, can't make it to Florida, they can almost, again, this is where the creativity, the imagination comes in. They can just envision like they're in the Florida waters with Shelly and her friends. And one of the things that we also encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, I had the opportunities to have a sit-down interview with Mary as part of the newest episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series, which is now available, by the way, prfromtheheart.com, or if you're watching us in the PR from the Heart YouTube channel. And she was talking about the inspiration for her book was her son. And knowing the fact that there were children the same age, younger or older, that were moving through challenges coming out of COVID. And she really wanted to do her part to be able to make a difference, to encourage children to remember that they are loved and they're special just the way that they are. And she didn't want any child to feel lost or afraid or just that they don't want to fit in. And that's really commendable when you can do your part to be able to transform your pain into your passion, into your purpose. I'm really looking forward to more work from Mary Asaro. So, which, by the way, little Forrest, even though he's sitting down and he's got a cone around his head, he is still giving 2 paws up for Shelly and friends. Again, that's one of the biggest endorsements that you can have, especially if you are a dog lover and a big fan of children's books as well, too. You can head on over to Mary's official website, writtenbymary.com, or you can head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. If you feel guided to do so, first things first, you can purchase your copy of Shelly and Friends, but you can also leave a 5-star review on Amazon. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Mary to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. And of course, if you head on over to your favorite children's or independent bookstore or your local library in your neighborhood, if they don't have their copy of Shelly and Friends, you can make that kind recommendation because, again, librarians, bookstore owners, booksellers, they are always looking for some new books that will not only fly off the shelves, during the back to school season and the holiday season, but books that they know will make a tangible, indelible impact on the life of a little one. So that takes care of our first book, David, which is again Shelly and Friends by Mary Asaro. Now the trolley is going to be heading a lot of mileage. It's actually going to be going to visiting our neighbors to the north. So did you know, David, I think you of all people may know, is that September the 10th is when we celebrate Grandparents' Day. That was put into existence by President Jimmy Carter, who is still with us in the process, and he actually signed that into existence. So September the 10th, every year, we celebrate grandparents and the wonderful beings that they are, the love that they bring into the world. I know that I'll be celebrating my grandmother on September the 10th, and you are also a grandparent as well, too.
Yes, I'll have to remind my grandchildren that they have a grandparent and grandparents, a granddad and a grandma right here in Pittsburgh. Some of our children or grandchildren live in California, some in Canada, and a couple in Pittsburgh. So I'll send out reminders.
Yes.
But in the meantime, we're going to do 1, 2, Grandpa Loves You, right? That's the name of the next book.
That is correct. And so the trolley is going to be traveling from Fort Myers, Florida, over to Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So this is when we go north of the border with the trolley. And then, of course, that is where Shelly Becker, the author of 1, 2, Grandpa Loves You. Of course, if you remember 1, 2, Grandma Loves You, this is the second in the series, illustrated by one of our favorite neighbors, longtime friend of us here at PR From the Heart, Dan Yaccarino. Of course, you know him as one of the most popular children's authors and illustrators in the world of children's literature. You, of course, know his work through Nickelodeon, Nick Jr., Oswald Jr., the Backyardigans, and of course, Apple TV, Doug Unplugs as well, too. So he is tried and true in the world of children's literature. And I thought this would be a perfect fit because this of course, is our full August bookcast for August 2023. And by the time that we deliver our September bookcast, it's going to be past September the 10th. So this is a very, again, similar to Shelly and Friends, very short book, but very powerful, a lot of love, a lot of heart in the process. So take us inside the pages, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Abrams Kids. Help me to take us inside the pages of 1, 2, Grandpa Loves You, David.
Well, it's a delightful book, and it opens with a young girl. Now, I looked around and I didn't see a name attached to it's just a young girl who I'd say would be around 6 or 7. Wouldn't that be the age of the young girl in the book?
So, especially since she has the unicorn design on her neon green backpack.
That's right. Well, in her room, she's packing some of her clothes in the suitcase, and she's getting ready to go on a trip with her grandfather. And then 1, 2, Grandpa Loves You, and then comes 3, 4, rush to the door, and the illustration shows her rushing to the door to welcome and hug her grandpa. And her parents apparently have been helping her get ready because they are both there to welcome Grandpa. And in the illustration, it shows her sleeping bag is packed and ready to go. In fact, the cat is sitting on top of the bag watching all of the action going on. Then it is 5, 6, camping trip. Well, off they go into Grandpa's station wagon, all packed with camping gear. Her parents wave goodbye, and then it is 7, 8, best traveling mate, or best traveling mates, you could say. They're a perfect traveling group, granddad and the grandchild. Well, one of the illustrations as they start down the road in the car, there's heavy traffic. And it starts to slow down, but then traffic moving again. So it's 9, 10, moving again. I like all of the. It really flows. I love the counting. Well, they arrive at the campsite. The counting begins again. We're going to start from 1, and the illustration shows them at the campsite, and Grandpa is carefully guiding his granddaughter to the trail. He's very particular and doesn't want it to get hurt. And it says, 1, 2, Grandpa loves you. The next page shows him looking out over this beautiful vista. It's of mountains and trees and a river. And then we say 3, 4, the great outdoors. And as they walk along, they spot a bird's nest and 5, 6 hungry chicks. But Grandpa signals to be quiet to the granddaughter, because sure enough, here comes Mama Wren with food. And then it is 9, 10, Mama Wren. And so some new actions begins, and they start over, the counting starts over again. Well, they go off exploring, and then it is 1, 2, Grandpa loves you. 3, 4, hike and explore, and there are illustrations showing them climbing hills and exploring the various plants and trees that are around them. In other words, it's a busy day. Well, then 5, 6, gathering sticks. Their tent is up, and they're building a fire to cook and keep warm. The campfire is burning, so then it is 7, 8, the campfire is great. And then the next illustration, we see a serene picture of the tent. And inside the tent, I think Grandpa and granddaughter are snoozing in for the night. And it says 9, 10, all snuggled in. Well, morning arrives, and we see Grandpa and his granddaughter preparing breakfast over a campfire that they made, I guess from the twigs they gathered and so forth. Well, the new day has begun and is again 1, 2, Grandpa loves you. He always reinforces that. Grandpa, every new day, Grandpa says, Grandpa loves you. Then off on an adventure. 3, 4, a sandy shore. I guess they found a lake or a beach around there, and I'm sure they took a little swim. And they had some other adventures. Well, the next thing we see, they probably had a wonderful busy time, because the next thing we see, the next page shows them back in Grandpa's station wagon at the end of a busy day. It is nighttime, and they return home. As they drive along, they're seen eating trail mix. That's very appropriate. Trail mix for the trail. Right. So it is 5, 6, munching on trail mix. Well, they're home again, and they're at the table, or the kitchen table, it seems like, and they're working on an art project, and they have various things they collected from their adventures on the table, and things like a twig and some leaves and pine cones and feathers and various things they found on their adventures. So they made making a hanging sculpture, and it seems to me that they're using the twig and they're hanging a leaf, and maybe there's a feather and something else. So there's an art project too for them. And as they're creating the sculpture, Mom and Dad are sort of peeking around the corner, watching them. And they're having such a wonderful time, Grandpa and his granddaughter, making a sculpture. It says then 7, 8, let's create. And the final image we see is Grandpa and granddaughter rubbing noses and saying, 9, 10, can we go again? And ending with, of course, Grandpa loves you. A wonderful little book. And I love the counting and how it starts over each time. There's a different change in the action. The counting begins again. 1, 2, Grandpa loves you. 3, 4, all of that. And it reinforces friendship, companionship, families, and in a way, arithmetic, counting in a way too. And I would think this would be for maybe preschool and early elementary, wouldn't you say?
I would say yes. And then also the age range can range enough, because I just celebrated my 42nd birthday.
Yes.
I love the book. And I'm obviously past the, early childhood age, but I know that my inner child loved 1, 2, Grandpa loves you.
Oh, I liked it too. Both of these books they really complement each other too. They're a delightful read, and they pull you into the story. Uh, and I can I can relate to this story because I was very close to my grandfather, and he would take me not camping, but he took me to because we lived in a city, but he took me to the first trip was Niagara Falls. That's camping in a way.
Yep.
but then my grandparents took me to see films, my first stage play, and they bought me books. In fact, my first book that I loved, and people don't seem to know it anymore, they bought me Uncle Wiggily. And I hope some of our viewers and listeners will search out Uncle Wiggily because it was a classic children's book, and there's a whole series of them. I still have it. At any rate, I loved, and I'm sure. And at the end of the day, my grandfather would take me to the bus stop because I live in a different part of Pittsburgh, and he would say, "Skip," he called me Skip. "Skip, Grandpa loves you." And I would get on the bus and he'd wave and he'd go get his streetcar to his part of the town. So this resonates with me, this story. So I really enjoyed it, and I hope our viewers will look it up in the library or a bookstore or whatever. And again, can you tell us the illustrator's name one more time? You mentioned it earlier.
So we have Shelly Becker, who of course is the author, and Yaccarino, who is the illustrator. Both of them.
That's right.
Did a great job with this series, because one of the many things that I also love about 1-2 Grandpa Loves You is the repetition. So again, we had mentioned about kids needing to remember how loved and special they are. And this has its own similar synergy to Shelly and Friends, because you keep hearing 1-2 Grandpa loves you. 1-2 Grandpa loves you. So again, there is David, there are children in the world that actually feel that their family doesn't love them. And there are children that maybe based on their experience, their family, because of extenuating circumstances, they may not necessarily, it pains me to say, but there's families out there that may not necessarily love their children in the way in which the children want to be loved. And so it's important again that there's this continuous repetition. And one of the reasons why I encourage those of our friends and neighbors who are tuning into episode number 30 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is, even if you are older, you still have the inner child within you. And it's interesting because I went back to some of the fond memories that I had with my grandfather growing up. So me being part Polish, we've got babcia, which is grandmother, and you've got Jaja, which is grandfather. So my grandfather, he used to love playing Yahtzee. And every single time that I, go to, whether it be a Target or out here in San Diego, we've got the wonderful independent toy store Geppetto's, many chains across San Diego. And I'll see the Yahtzee game and I'm like, Jaja loved that. And it's interesting too, because I remember one of the vivid conversations I had with my grandfather. I remember his favorite meal, from what I remember, was tomato soup and grilled cheese, right? The simplest of meals. But I remember him, and he would take his time eating his food to the point where he reserved an hour for lunch. Now, in this fast-paced world that we live in, many of us, it's just very easy to try to eat while we're working, or we're not being mindful and conscious when we're eating. And I remember asking my grandfather, said, Jaja, why are you taking so long to eat? And I remember him sharing with me, and I'm probably paraphrasing his words, but he says, and it's interesting because this goes back to a Mr. Rogers song, I like to take my time.
That's right. And, one of my favorite things to do is, a lot of people say they don't like to eat alone. And I don't like to eat alone all the time, but there are times when, as you mentioned, grilled cheese and tomato soup, I love to have a lunch and have a book or a newspaper and slowly take an hour to eat lunch, soup, maybe a sip of iced tea or coffee, and read a book or a newspaper. That is such a pleasure to me. Just that time is precious. And I think that's what you're saying, that what your grandfather was doing too. That's time was precious for him.
100%.
And in a way, it taught you a lesson too, because he told you about it, and I think you absorbed some of that too.
Well,
he's passing it on.
It's interesting because, again, like, we remember the things that we need to remember, and I can admit, full transparency, I don't take an hour when I eat my food. I've been more on the, whether it be working while I'm eating, or just not sitting down at the table. And it's just like, it's reminding yourself, it's retraining yourself. It's like, what, this is okay to be able to do these things. And when one of the great things about grandparents is that, and you can speak from experience, David, is that grandparents have such wisdom and knowledge to be able to share. Maybe necessarily a child may not necessarily resonate with everything that their grandma or grandpa does, but there's specific things like, even I've mentioned this on many episodes of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, especially as we just celebrated the memory of my grandmother, Jane Sajecki, who passed away 10 years ago, just a few days ago from when we recorded this episode of the Bookcast. And just whenever I would walk into her home, she would just like, how are you? How are you doing? Would you like something to eat? Now, again, growing up, being part Polish, one of the favorite snacks that I had was, in my grandparents' house, they would have sour cream and onion Pringles and Planters cheese curls. Those were
not pierogies. No pierogies.
Well, yes. Pierogies were the meals. Okay. And in fact, a little sneak preview, because I'm going to be returning back to Pittsburgh, where they do have pierogies on the regular instead of out here in San Diego, where they really don't have as many pierogi places. But again, just those bonds we see through what Shelly and Dan vividly share, write about, describe through the words, through the illustrations. It's about those bonds. When you spend your time with grandpa, with grandma, you're creating those memories and moments. I remember, again, very vividly, like it was yesterday. So my grandparents lived in Buffalo in a little village called Sloan, which was in the Cheektowaga area. And they had a corner store. And this was like really big for me. So like when I would go and sleep over, we'd go visit the corner store, and they would have, they would have ice cream, like the little $1.50 ice cream sandwiches, that kind of thing. They would also have, if you remember back in the day, those little the little machines where you would put the quarter in and you would get the little plastic football helmets. So they would have that, and they would also have like baseball cards. They would have football cards. So it was just this this paradise for a child. And then plus, back in the days where malls were more prevalent, I remember we would take the 4-H bus from where my grandmother lived. It was just, it was a very short drive, but it was a little bit of a longer bus ride. But we would go to the Thruway Mall. And it's interesting too, and we got to begin to wind things down shortly. But again, one of the memories that I had specifically with my grandmother, since we're talking about Grandparents' Day, there is a very famous movie that came out in the early 1990s based on a Saturday Night Live skit called Wayne's World. And it featured Mike Myers and Dana Carvey. And I remember my grandmother actually took me to see Wayne's World 2. Now, like, what kind of grandmother takes their child to see Wayne's World 2? My grandmother over here. So again, fond memories that I had of my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side. So again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow Shining Stars, you can purchase your copy of 1-2 Grandpa Loves You. It is now available. You can head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Shelly and for Dan is to leave a 5-star review on Amazon, to let them know that they're doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. 1-2 Grandpa Loves You is now available at most major bookstores across the country. You can also check it out at your favorite local libraries. And remember, if 1-2 Grandpa Loves You is not available at your favorite children's or independent bookstore or your local library, make that kind suggestion. Let them know that you heard it right here on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, and then they can do their part to be able to do their part so that little ones can create more treasured memories with their grandparents, with their grandpas specifically, but also their grandmas in the process as well too. And again, little Forrest does give 2 paws up for you. Grandpa loves you as well. This has been, David, of course, as we hear the trolley and the bell, we hear 2 different bells, so those are the double reminders that mean that it is time to go. But this is, not only is this, a little mini milestone for us, David, because now it's officially the 2.5-year mark that we have been doing the Bookcast, but there are many more magical trolley stops to come. But before we mention that, raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 30 of the Neighborly Podcast.
Yep. 2 hands.
Hands from the little ones on screen. As we like to say, that means job well done, mission accomplished. Now, if you are a children's author and would love for David and I to be able to share your brand new children's book, to review it on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, you know where to connect with us via our official website, prfromtheheart.com, or you can connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook, and it used to be called Twitter. It's now called X. So we're doing our part to be able to kind of get with the program with that. So Facebook, X, and Instagram as well too. Of course, again, if you have indeed really enjoyed this episode, one of the many ways you pledge your support for us here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and share this very special trolley stop that you have been enjoying. That is episode number 30 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. We are super excited because we still have one more month in this virtual setting, but it is official. It is official that for the month of October, I'll be hopping aboard the trolley that flies. Well, it's actually an airplane, but it's disguised like a trolley that flies. And I'll be heading back out to San Diego. David and I will be reconnecting in person, and we will be spending some time with our friends and neighbors at the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh. And we are going to be recording another installment of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, 1, possibly 2 episodes as well. So we're going to be doing our part to be able to, it's so good because the virtual setting, the remote setting is awesome. David's out in Pittsburgh. I'm here in San Diego. But when we have the opportunities, David, you remember earlier this year when we were with Annesley Hackathorn and Jim Price and the magical team behind Maleku's Gift. We had so much fun in Pittsburgh earlier this year, and I'm already getting very excited just talking about that as well too. David, before we wrap up the Bookcast, what are some of the things that you've learned about through the course of this Bookcast? And then based on that, what is your message, your personalized message to parents and to educators this back to school season?
Oh boy, that could take a long time. But what I did learn are about 2 new books, and I want to do a test run now. I have my youngest grandson is 3 years old. His name is Ashton, and he lives in Pittsburgh, and I think I want to take especially 1, 2, Grandpa Loves You and read it to him. So I learned about that, and I want to read him Shelly and Friends and get his reaction when the questions are asked. That would tell me a lot. I don't know, a 3-year-old, you never can tell how long they'll sit, but I'm going to give it a try. So I learned about 2 new books that I hope I can introduce and reinforce books and reading to my grandkids. That's such an important thing. And so far, our daughter reads voraciously. And I think one of the reasons is that my wife is a voracious reader, and she caught that. And the other 2 are artists, and my wife's also an artist too. And so children catch what you love doing, they'll catch it. So enjoy reading in front of your children. I think that's some advice. And enjoy doing what you love to do in front of your children, because they'll catch that. And I hope it's reading or painting or dancing or dog walking.
Yes, especially with little Forrest, even though he can't go for walks with having the cone around his head for the time being. But when we reconnect for the September Bookcast, he'll be able to already be back on his walks. And then your personalized message for parents and educators for the back to school season, what would that be, David?
Oh boy, I think it'd be great if they could find a book or this book, Shelly and Friends, that has the questions. It could be an assignment for bringing in a picture. Here's what you need for our assignment. We're going to read the book Shelly and Friends, and here's what you need. Give them a list. Bring in a picture of your brothers and sisters, a picture of you, practice writing your name, etc., etc. If I were a teacher, I think I would do that using this book, using both books. Grandpa Loves You in a different way, but Shelly and Friends is really an activity book. It's a family activity book is what the subtitle is of Shelly and Friends. And if I were a teacher, I'd make the assignment, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks into the semester, but our project for Monday or whatever day, here's your list. Bring in this, and this, and we're all going to do it as a class, and we'll each have our own personal book. And that's what I like about that book. So teachers, if you know about Shelly and Friends, you might take a read and see if you can incorporate it in your classrooms. And Grandpa Loves You is a wonderful story too. So two books I think we both really like these two books. I think we you spoke about our 2.5-year anniversary of reading books and so forth. We've liked everything in different ways that we have read and talked about. These two are especially I like because I can relate to my grandkids too with these books, and I think that's what books do too. They help you relate, and we're both here to encourage reading. That's what I hope. I hope educators encourage reading. I know there are games you can play, and I know there's television. I know there's many things, but let's try to stress reading. Now, it's not easy, but we can give it a shot.
Agreed.
So that is my not advice, but my suggestion to educators. Let's ramp up the reading, and I'm sure they're doing. I don't have to tell teachers to ramp up the reading, but I'll reinforce it.
I appreciate you sharing that, David, because this is one of the really wonderful things is that people are, over the past 2.5 years, they've become to see you, parents, caregivers, grandparents, educators, they see you as a trusted resource in the world of children's literature. They see that as the Bookcast as well too. And this is why, again, I still remember when we first connected, which seems it's been like 4 years ago. I mean, it was literally around the time when the Mr. Rogers documentary came out, or shortly thereafter. And the two of us were talking about, like, let's create something together. What can we do? And then, it actually evolved into, and in fact, for those who are tuning into the Bookcast for the first time, David is the one who actually coined the term Bookcast, because, it's a podcast, yes, but it's a video podcast. And then you had mentioned, why don't we call it a Bookcast? And so hence the term Neighborly Reviews Bookcast was coined, so to speak. So,
and our mission is not necessarily to review them in a critical way.
Correct.
We're just letting people know what's available for young children and children's literature. That is our mission.
Correct.
We don't want to say this is good or this is bad. We're just saying, here's the story. Take a look.
Correct.
And introduce it to your children.
Statistics.
That's our mission.
100%. And we're proud of that here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. It's, statistically speaking, there are more children's books in the world than there ever have been. So really the marketplace is flooded. And many of the books that we've shared on the Bookcast, yes, some of the books parents and educators know of right off the bat. But even some of the other books that we've shared about the Bookcast, I've spoken with many, countless over the years, parents, grandparents, caregivers, educators that said, I had no idea this book was even out there, especially if you're looking for a specific subject on a book, for example. So like if you're looking for a book that's geared more towards children's mental health, Shelly and Friends is perfect. If you're looking for a good grandpa book that can create a stronger bond between the little one, between grandchild and grandpa, you've got 1-2 Grandpa Loves You. So this is why, again, there are many more trolley stops to come, including our return to the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh. We also want to give a little mention as well, too, because there's another special anniversary that is forthcoming beginning in just a few days from when this episode premieres, and that is the 5-year anniversary of the Children's Book Spotlight series. That is now, and we're very, very blessed to be able to say this, it is one of the most popular, longest running video podcasts in the world of children's literature, and some of the, literally the top names in the world of children's literature, authors and illustrators, will be joining us, in addition to some of the shining stars, the rising stars in the kidlit community. So over the months of September and October, we're going to be having a 2-month-long celebration of the 5-year anniversary of the Children's Book Spotlight series. So if you would like to be able to sit down with me and have a wonderful conversation, be a featured guest on the Children's Book Spotlight series, because we're already starting to schedule things out for 2024. You can connect with us via our official website, pierrefromtheheart.com, and of course our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, in the process as well. And of course, we're doing our part not only for the holiday season, but sooner than we know it. As I mentioned, the start of the year, the new year, 2024, is just going to be around the corner. If you are a children's author and are looking to create a book media tour, a national book media tour, a book media tour in a city of your choosing, if you are looking for dedicated PR support to be able to help you share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's book, whether before the holiday season or for the start of the new year, you can schedule your courtesy connection, call it prfromtheheart.com, and let us see how we can be of service to you. One more time, once again, the 2 books that both, again, have 2 paws up, 2 big endorsements from Little Forrest: Shelly and Friends, written by Mary Asaro, in addition to 1-2 Grandpa Loves You, written by Shelly Becker, in addition to illustrated by Dan Yaccarino. Both are now available on Amazon. Pledge your support for Mary, for Shelly, and for Dan. Leave 5-star reviews for both books. That's a great way to let them know that they're doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. If you head to your favorite local library, your children's or independent bookstore, and the books are not there, make those kind suggestions. Let them know that they should stock Shelly and Friends along with 1-2 Grandpa Loves You. But again, many more magical trolley stops to come. But for now, it is our time to say goodbye, at least for now. So again, we of course want to give a little tip of the cap as we close out this episode of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast to our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. Of course, David spent many a years with him on set and off set at Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, filmed at WQED in Pittsburgh, and of course, Fred, in his own way, he encourages, as we mentioned, that we're loved and we're special just the way that we are. And in fact, he actually incarnated that with his physical weight when he walked this earthly plane. If you're saying, what are you talking about, John? Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds, allegedly for his entire natural adult life. And I truly believe that. There's 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. So as a little tip of the cap to Mr. Rogers, of course, we share our favorite 3 numbers because David, as always, is kind of join us each and every month on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. We like to share 243. So there's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. That is our reminder that we see you, we feel you, we understand you, we connect with you, that we see the inherent worth within you. We remind you that you're loved, you're special, you're whole, you're healthy, you're complete, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are. So for Little Forrest, for David Newell, for myself, John Masiulionis, we want to thank all of you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. As we now head on into further the back to school season and the holiday season and beyond, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators such as Mary Asaro, Shelly Becker, Dan Yaccarino, and more, who are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. For the pillars of our community, children's bookstores, independent bookstores, and local libraries, and above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.